Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today, although it looks like we have a morbid show. We're in a, we both said, at the same time, we said Addams Family.
We're of one mind today, Robby.
Which you're enjoying the show as well,
I
Wednesday.
am, you need to catch up.
I'm behind because I paused it to just like rewatch while I was sick in bed this week, the original movies, which I like so much.
Yeah, I can't hold that against you.
Okay. Well, what is on our schedule today?
Well, News Nation's Brian Eaton joins us later. We'll discuss new developments in authorities' investigations of the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Plus, we'll get into some updates from the southern border, including a last-minute ruling halting the expiration of Title 42. But first, Elon Musk has broken his silence after some 10 million Twitter users voted to oust him from the app's leadership. Musk now says only Twitter Blue users will be invited to participate in policy-related polls on the platform, meaning the chief Twit appears here to stay. The policy suggestion came from one user who suggested that as paying subscribers, Twitter Blue users, quote, actually have skin in the game. Further up than that in the thread, another user suggested that the results of Musk's original poll were due to bots sent to trick the CEO into resigning, to which Musk replied, interesting.
Can always blame the bots. Meanwhile, long-standing tensions between Musk and Senator Elizabeth Warren appeared to reignite over the weekend after the senator from Massachusetts penned an open letter to the chairwoman of Tesla questioning the potential conflicts of interest created between Musk's car company and his social media platform. Tesla did not respond to other outlets' requests for comment. So it was quite a couple of days for good old Elon.
Yeah, so on the Elizabeth Warren conflict of interest piece, I mean, some of the conflicts that she raised was the potential that because the other car companies are advertisers on Twitter, that Elon would either try to, give them disfavorable terms in order to help Tesla, or that the reverse would end up being true, and that he would be incentivized to make money from them on Twitter in a way that would disadvantage Tesla as a company. There was a critique that potentially, obviously Tesla shareholders have been even online on Twitter criticizing some of Elon Musk's tweets, that his posture, that his public persona here has caused a really significant diminishment in the share price of Tesla, which is lower than it's been in a very long time. I think it was down $150, or it was at $150. These losses are real and they're manifesting in a real way. So even if you were supportive of Elon Musk, there is some question, and you're supportive of Tesla, of whether or not his stewardship of Twitter is actually good for his main business. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a legitimate question, regardless of whether it's appropriate or whether it matters that Elizabeth Warren particularly is asking it. I think she has an axe to grind against Elon like other kind of combative people from the liberal mainstream.
You don't think it's because she's been a consumer advocate? I mean, I have my beef with Elizabeth Warren, but she is in a position of being a longtime consumer advocate.
I'm not sort of totally in love with consumer advocacy. That's not really my views. But I will say that Elon, for running the poll for whether he should stay in charge. So his policy via poll thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me in any framing, because also when he put some free speech question to a poll,
whether or not he should reinstate the journalists he had banned.
Either if you have a principled free speech view of what you're doing on social media, on Twitter, then you're not going to put these questions to polls, because the whole point should be, well, even unpopular speech, even disfavored speech, even speech that 90% of people say is vile and shouldn't belong, well, you're carving out this stance in favor of free speech. So we're not going to put that to vote in the same way that the First Amendment stops us from putting speech to a vote.
Right.
Stops you from saying, no, those naysayers during a war who are, casting doubt on America's strength, we got to put them in jail or fine them for speaking out against us. First Amendment says, no, you can't do that, even if everybody wants to. Or there's Nazis marching down the street. How dare, that's disgusting. You're making people very uncomfortable, feel unsafe. You can't do that. We're all against that. First Amendment says, no, you can't do that, even if you all want to. That's what the First Amendment's about. And again, he's not required to do the First Amendment. But when he's talking, he says he's going to, but then he puts the question to a poll, that doesn't make sense. And then secondly, these polls are not real. This is subject to internet whims. everyone who runs the poll to find out, this is how you get Bodie McBoatface. I tweeted that he's going to Bodie McBoatface himself out of a job.
Yeah.
Because people on the internet, it's totally different incentives. It doesn't necessarily correspond to the way people would actually vote, or it doesn't channel a general election. It's not representative.
Right. I saw some people saying, I'm going to vote yes, he should step down because I don't like Elon Musk, and people saying, I don't like Elon Musk, so I'm going to vote no, he should stay because his humiliation is hilarious.
Or you might vote yes because it was the more chaotic option.
Sure.
It's what will cause a few more days of entertainment out of this whole thing.
Exactly.
So I don't, and then changing it from everyone to just people with check marks doesn't make sense either,
it's
because
ridiculous.
Well, then that's filtering by the higher society.
Right, it's elitism. Wasn't the whole point of this that we didn't want elites making these kind of decisions behind closed doors? That we didn't want members of the Biden administration or the Trump administration or the FBI being able to pick up the phone and call Twitter and having their whims executed on the app? Isn't that the whole point of all of this? So for him now to say, people with blue checks get special privileges. One, I'm not sure that's going to help the poll results in the way that he necessarily thinks, because a lot of the blue checks are the very journalists that he has been antagonistic toward. Moreover, this seems to be a disturbing continuation of the trend that we saw during that stand-up moment where he joined Dave Chappelle on stage at his comedy show, where when he got pushback from the audience, the response from Dave Chappelle was, you're mad that he's rich. Here's the richest man in the world. He's richer than you. All the boos are coming from the poor section. And I don't know, as someone who's kind of styled himself as responsive to the people, wanting to hear from the people directly, that is a very anti-populist stance to take.
Yeah, the suspensions of the journalists, I think, was very bad. I understand he thought it was consistent with his new doxing definition, which seems to be you can't give public people's locations in real time. I find that to be a very not usable standard. People often point out famous people when you encounter them in real life.
Street.
I've done that before. I've seen Amy Klobuchar, Lisa Murkowski, like, oh, just saw X on the corner of wherever. I think people have done that to me, frankly.
At a World Cup
identified.
Game.
Right.
He doxed himself by texting pictures of himself from a World Cup game. So and I understand that that's not exactly the same, and you can, I guess, choose to dox yourself, and that's a different thing than someone else doxing you.
And I get that he wants to keep his kids,
of course,
private, absolutely. But then the journalists who were reporting on it.
Yeah, it was journalists who were reporting on the original incident, which is not doxing. Yeah. Moreover, look. Again, there's some dispute over whether or not it is genuinely publicly available information, his flight information for his private jet, versus whether or not he uses this kind of privacy protection system where it's supposed to keep that information from the public, and that the Twitter Jets account actually used a little bit of triangulation to figure out the location of the jet. Fine. But if it is the case that it's your jet that can be tracked because of some publicly information that is out there, and you're genuinely concerned about your kids being tracked because of that jet, there is also the opportunity to not put your kids on the private jet.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, is that the world we're living in? Everybody's privacy rights have to take a downgrade because Elon Musk's kids have to be on the private jet?
We have to...
Again, not the most populist man I've ever heard of.
If he really wants to reconfigure the rules of Twitter such that privacy has to be respected to a much greater degree, that would be a choice we could make.
Sure.
I think in many ways social media has an ability to violate our privacy manifestly in ways that I'm uncomfortable with. And there are trade-offs, though, between privacy and speech. And the kind of American conception is to really default in favor of speech and not so much in favor of privacy. This is not true in other countries where there are more limits on speech in favor of privacy. You could do things a little bit differently, but it doesn't feel like that's being consistently applied. Right. This feels like a very ad hoc rationalization to handle.
Elon. Yeah. This has always been about what harms Elon.
And we're coming off very critical of Elon here. So I just want to say again, I am very glad for what he has accomplished over the last couple of weeks in terms of disclosing what went wrong with the previous regime. I think he's an interesting figure with a lot of interesting ideas. I think in theory, I like the idea of him in charge of Twitter better than the people who were handling it previously. However, it seems to be, he seems too online. This seems to be taking all his attention in a very unhealthy way, and I don't want to diagnose him from afar, but We all know people who are just too active on Twitter or wherever on social media, and it's not good for them. And you just have to log off sometimes for your own health, for your own like sanity. That just like replying to everything and being obsessed with the platform gives you a distorted view of yourself and the world, and it's not healthy. And I see him doing that, and it would be very bad if this, in my view, brilliant innovator who has so much to offer the world in terms of Tesla and putting a freaking colony on Mars goes insane from being overly obsessed with this one minor social media site.
Maybe he should follow YouTube's advice, or at least the guy who or woman who administers the YouTube Twitter account, and just touch grass.
Yeah, that was good advice. It was good advice. Very good advice. All right, I will have my radar also on the Twitter files coming up next. Stay with us.